We're really thrilled to have Esteban, co-founder and CEO of Team&Tonic with us. We're just going to take a few minutes before we start, Esteban, if that's okay with you. Just going to post the links on socials.
Sure.
Um, yeah, so let's just take a few minutes while people are gathering here. So yeah, you can stream the live directly on LinkedIn and on Twitter as well. And we're just gonna make sure that everything is working technically. Yeah, I see the event on LinkedIn. So for anyone who wants to join the conversation, you can do so by simply adding comments or questions directly under the live event on LinkedIn or on Twitter as well. And I'm just gonna take the link to make sure that people who signed up on on the event on LinkedIn have access to it. So that will just take 1 second, and then we'll kick off the conversation. So this is working on LinkedIn, and then on Twitter, I see that we're live as well. So that's great. Technology is on our side, and it's not always the case. Amazing. And then here as well. Wonderful. So perfect. So yeah, I'll do my best to monitor any questions that are coming in. So again, for anyone watching this either on Twitter or on LinkedIn, feel free to join the conversation. We want this to be a casual chat. We're really excited to have Esteban, who's been building Team and Tonic for 4 years now, with us today to really talk through a lot of the experience that he had um, to showcase what a designer can do and put in place to be part of that 1% that brands are looking to hire. So for anyone who has any specific questions, you can join the conversation again on the LinkedIn Live or on the Twitter Live as well, and just add the comments directly in there. So yeah, I think we're all set. Esteban, thank you so much for joining. Can you just tell us where you're calling from and how's your week going so far? Maybe to start things off.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm excited about this talk and be able to share my experience with the community and with designers. So, yeah, I'm currently based in Ecuador. It's the country I was born. I grew up actually in France most of my life, and I'm trying to escape the winter. So, yeah,
Amazing.
that's why I'm here.
Amazing. So yeah, as mentioned and as you all know, Esteban has been leading Team and Tonic for 4 years now. On my side, I'm Maher. I'm one of the co-founders at Sorbet. I'm really excited about this talk because typically when I talk to freelancers, the two main challenges that come up are one, how do I find more clients? And second, once I find a client, how do I actually get paid when working with international clients? And I think there's a lot of synergy here between Team and Tonic and what we're building at Sorbet to answer to those two questions. So again, I think we're going to be looking at maybe a conversation of 30 minutes, maybe a bit more, depending on if we have some questions from the audience. But yeah, maybe just to kick things off, do you want to tell us a little bit more about what were you doing before Tim and Tonic, and how did the idea kind of arrive to you, and when you decided to focus on building it?
Yeah. So for starters, Team&Tonic is a network of the best 0.8% of freelance designers. So our mission is to help startups, mostly AI and tech startups, hire the best freelance designers worldwide, and we want to provide the best quality price ratio in the market. Now, the reason I got started with this company is that I actually faced the struggles of having to hire designers myself. Um, Obviously, the first thing that came to my mind was at first going on Upwork, and it was not easy. And then I started to see that startups faced the same struggles, and designers as well. There is actually like a couple of struggles they go through. So on the startup side, depending on the person you go with, you can face slow execution. Sometimes you don't have the best strategy to hire there. You can also get like bad quality sometimes, which is I faced myself a bit of all of them. And on the designer side, so yeah, I've seen designers that are overwhelmed by client acquisition, payment management, admin task, invoices, etc. They have to manage it all on themselves. So they have, you know, like the downside of having to do the work without necessarily the upside of being able to scale a company because they're alone. So on the top of that, they are like isolated as well because sometimes they don't get feedback on their work, and it's extremely important to have perspective if you want to provide a great output. And yeah, and finally, like sometimes they are also limited by their skills. So for example, if you have a client who comes in and then he wants a website with multiple pages within it, and then he also asks for illustrations, motion design, or these other deliverables like that, then the freelancer will either need to provide that himself, or he will need to ask the client to look for someone else, which is not the best experience for the client as well. So like noticing all of that, so that's only on the designer side. There are like other problems on the startup side. Then yeah, I mean, I was thinking that there is a solution to solve all of that, and then like not even talk about the problems that arise within generalist freelancing platforms themselves as well.
No, that's amazing. I think echo a lot what you just said about, you know, a lot of the freelancers deciding to go on that journey, but sometimes feeling a bit isolated because it is a long journey. You know, for people who are working in a company, you have you know, team members, managers who can guide you. But it's true that you know, the journey for many of the designers, I'm sure, that are listening in today, at some point can be a bit lonely. And having, you know, an organization or a community, which is actually an even stronger word, that can guide you and help you, in your case, you know, land clients and contracts, can be you know, a way to keep motivation up. I'm curious, maybe if you can give us a little bit more insights as to where does Team&Tonic stand today? How many freelancers have you worked with? What are some of the brands that you're able to attract?
Sure. So where Team&Tonic stands today, so we have built a network of the best 0.8% of freelance designers. We have access over 120,000 designers. So far, we have been working with mostly tech startups, tech and AI startups based in the USA, in a few in Europe, in the UAE as well, and yeah, and now we are expanding. We grew mostly through word of mouth. I believe that it's extremely important to provide the best possible service, especially because that's where we are heading to. I mean, yeah, the differentiation of providing design as a service, then it would be more on the quality side more than on the speed or quantity side, because that's something that will be delivered more and more by AI itself and by generalist platforms, freelancing platforms.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, maybe you were being a little bit modest, but I did some research before this, and they do attract really you know, top tier brands, Disney, Netflix, North Face. So I know, you know, I'm sure you're providing a lot of great work to the freelancers, you know, community. I'm curious, you talked about the clients and where they're based. And in terms of the freelancers that you attract, do you really see that it's a demographic that's coming from all around the world? Or do you have a couple areas or regions that you see freelancers be a bit more focused on?
Yeah, we don't discriminate at all regarding on the countries that the freelancers come from. So we have like around 105 countries freelancers come from within our database, and most of them come from. So we mostly focus on trying to be the best quality price ratio in the market. So that's why we look for designers overseas more than designers in the US. But yeah, we have a lot of people, like probably like about 40% of our database based in Latin America, like a big 30% in Europe, And then and then we also try to find people in Africa and the Middle East, in Asia as well. But for some reason it's we have less qualified people from this region, probably because there is also less designers on those regions, and and probably we are also more a bit more picky because design is highly correlated to the culture, and we are
Right.
mostly looking for design that is correlated to the American culture, so not necessarily to the ones of those regions, and then probably like that affects actually like the people who access our network.
Amazing. No, that makes a lot of sense. So yeah, I guess let's dive in just so that you're all aware. We're going to be talking mainly on as a freelance designer how can you scale your practice and be part of that 1% of freelancers who really stand out and work with those bigger brands. I know a lot of you decided to leave Upwork, to leave Fiverr. This is something we are hearing at Sorbet from a lot of freelancers just because of the fees and because of the black box that these platforms put you in. So a lot of freelancers decide to either go directly on social media and build their own audience or join communities such as Team&Tonic where they can be put in touch with clients. So the first segment is going to be focused on the freelancer, but then we're also going to dive into how startups should hire and think about hiring and working with freelancers. So yeah, maybe just to dive in from I think personally you've reviewed over 10,000 freelancer application. Team Tonic as a whole over 120,000 applications. So that's quite a bit. I'm sure you've identified a couple patterns from those applications. So what separates the top, in your case, 0.8% of freelance designers from the rest? Is there anything that really stands out?
Yeah, well, there are a couple of things. We actually have like an entire training for people who work within the organization, but I will focus like on three main tips that I can provide to freelancers. For some of you, it might be quite obvious, but I focus on that because these are like 80% of the reasons why we actually refuse most of the designers. So the first one is having a weak portfolio. So just if we see like like someone who is showcasing random projects instead of strategic case studies, and also like the project, sometimes it's okay to have like a project that is done from a boot camp or a fake project, let's say, but if all the portfolio is made in that regard, then it's something that we might move away. And sometimes it's also, so it depends on the category of designers we are looking for. So if we're looking, for example, for UX designers, then we will look more into the strategy. And then if we're looking for illustrators, then we'll look much more at the aesthetics of the illustration. And sometimes, so it happens that the profile of the designer is not that clear where he positioned himself into, and then regarding that specialty, then we may not see those key points we are looking for. So that's the first one. Then the second one is designers who lack of business understanding. That's super important because that's something that will determine the outcome of the project, and then also that's something that the company is looking for to reassure themselves about the type of designer that they are working with. So there are designers who don't understand that their work is, so they are hired by startups in order to get ROI, to increase conversions, and to increase retention for an application, for example, right? So there are very specific objectives that they need to keep in mind, and if they only mention those keywords like throughout the application, whether it's with us or directly with the client, then well, we will have like we'll appreciate their work even more, right? And the last one is, as an expert, you need to be able to guide the clients. So not just follow orders, and that's especially important right now in the AI era, because I think that execution is being commoditized. So it's extremely important to be able to provide perspective to the company you're working with. and be able to ask the right questions, align the work with business goals, and not shying away from offering feedback. And yeah, founders really, really appreciate a trusted advisor who can drive results and not just execute.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. I think there's a lot of very interesting points that you mentioned. I think it's something we've also seen, kind of sometimes the lack of business acumen, or as a freelancer, you have a specific skill set where you know you can design, or whether it's product design, illustration. But when it comes to a freelancing business, you also need to be able to wear a hat where you know you're a business owner, right? And you're selling to client, and they're paying for a service, so they expect more than just the execution. I think I'd be curious to maybe double click a little bit on what you've seen in terms of trends for designers between being a specialist in terms of their skill set versus more of a generalist, you know, kind of a Swiss knife that can do multiple things. Do you see one being maybe a little bit more bankable or attractive to clients, or both are just different kind of career path?
There are just different career paths, so it depends on the client project. Actually, there are and depends on the startup stage. However, and it also depends on the strategy. So, for example, like if you're looking for to work with early stage startups, then they may want to look for a more generalist designer because the work is more chaotic at that stage. And then like as they grow, they expect much more quality. So then like you should be more specialized. And then regarding the way you want to position yourself in the market as a freelancer, then if you want to increase your daily rate or your hourly rate, then in general it's much better to be a specialist than a generalist. But obviously it also depends about your expectations. I mean, about your aspirations and objectives. In any case, we don't really discriminate for that because we try to serve startups from the early stage to the scale-up stage. So yeah, both are actually important, and it mostly depends on the project.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Maybe to come back to the notion of you know the portfolio and how you're sharing your work. That is a very pivotal moment, I think, in the decision-making process for a client eventually to decide to work with a freelancer. But I want to dive a bit more deeper on kind of a sub-segment of that, which is personal branding and social proof. Right. So, do you think that plays an important role in securing, you know, freelance opportunities? And have you seen any freelancers maybe do it in a clever way to attract clients?
So yeah, specifically on their if they use their portfolio, I mean, when showing their portfolio, then it's important to show results and to highlight the business impact and case studies that they have with clients. That's super important because there are clients who are looking to work with designers who come from specific industries or who have a very specific skill set. So it's important to highlight that on the portfolio itself, or have a case study that drives the client through a story. The now the probably the mistake that I've seen in creating case studies is that sometimes designers they write like big paragraphs instead of just describing everything in 3 sentences maximum, right? So yeah, I mean, that's regarding like your personal brand that is portrayed through your portfolio. Now, regarding your personal brand that is like if we take brand in a larger sense, I think yeah, it's important to create an online presence. I think it can help you. We have had the case actually like of a designer who my team was following on YouTube, and he was like a famous YouTuber, and he applied to our network, and then like we asked the person to go through our entire process, and actually we had to, I mean, well, the quality of his work was not on the standards that we were expecting. So we had to actually have 3 red flags, and most of the time like we only have 1 red flag to refuse a person, but we waited for 3 red flags before refusing the person, and the only reason for that is that because we were biased that about the fact that the guy was on YouTube and that we knew him, right? So
Right.
yeah, I believe that to some extent building a personal brand influence. Now, to what extent and to what extent it influences people, then I don't know, but I think it's quite important in nowadays to start building that. But the problem as a freelancer is that many times, like when you handle clients, then you don't have the necessary time to build that, and the best way to do that is just to showcase that on your portfolio. So, yeah, I think that there are limitations to to how much they can actually build a personal brand.
Right. Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense, and I think it comes back to what you were saying about, as a freelancer, as a designer, you're no longer just a creative, but you also are a marketer, a business owner, and you need to be able to spend the time to invest, because at the end of the day, that's how you're going to be driving clients. Maybe just to wrap up on this segment about scaling as a freelancer, you talked about it a little bit, but can you dive a bit more into the process at Team&Tonic? How do you vet designers? And for anyone listening in who would be curious to join and apply, what can they expect? If you have any tips maybe for them as well?
Sure. So the way we vet designers, so we have a very specific process we go through. It's human-led, not AI-led. I don't truly want to outsource that part because I believe that the technology is not ready, and I believe that designers deserve to actually be assessed on their work by a human being also, because it's something that is highly emotional. So our process is the following. So first we look at the portfolio. Then then we look at their experience, and we see if that aligns with startups as well. Then we ask them to send us a Loom video, so a video recording of themselves. And in that video, we assess communication, preparation as well before the video. It's not easy to record a 5-minute video, especially because many designers tend to be introverts because they work alone in front of their computer, so they're not used to speak in front of a camera, or sometimes not even having meetings. And it's quite important to be able to have that communication skill so that they can interact with clients, and sometimes you need to disagree with clients in order to be able to provide the best possible work. Then we look at design challenge that is adapted depending on the specialties, so whether it's an illustrator, graphic designer, UX UI designer, etc. And and finally we have an HR call and an interview, and then we look more into interpersonal aspects, like cultural fit is quite important. And then probably the biggest red flag we have seen is that sometimes we have designers who go through the process and they don't reply fast. So for example, you send an email today and then they reply to you 2 weeks later, or you send a calendar invitation, hey, I need this project, and then they book it, they book that meeting for in 1 week and a half. So that's kind of a red flag, especially when you work with startups, because it's a fast-paced environment. If you would work with a corporate, maybe it wouldn't be a problem, but with startups, they need to sense you will be there for them, and you will care about the project.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Again, it comes back to being more than just a designer, right? And maybe before we move on to the second segment, a bit more focused on what startups are looking for, and how should they think about hiring freelancers. For anyone listening in who would like to apply, is the best way really just to go to team&tonic.com, or is there any other way to get in touch with you guys?
Yeah, you can just go to team&tonic.com. You can scroll down the page, and on the bottom we have a careers page. You can click there, and we provide the full information about the type of clients we work with, jobs available at the moment. And additional information about clients that we have had. We have, I think we have testimonials or case studies as well. So yeah.
Amazing. Don't miss out on the opportunity. I've been following the journey for a little bit, and they're doing amazing work. So make sure to go and check them out if you're looking for more clients and you have some time on your hands. Let's move on to the second segment, more about how startups should hire freelancers. So you talked about it in the intro about some of the challenges that startups face. But can you talk through some of those again a little bit, and then talk about how Team&Tonic, how you're thinking about solving those main challenges that startups have?
Yeah, definitely. So startups face mostly three main problems when hiring freelance designers. And those three problems have the consequence of them having slow execution. So I will start with this one, which is basically having someone who spends too much time on design. And the reason why that happens is because most of the time they have a poor fit between the designer that they select and their project. So it doesn't mean that the designer is necessarily bad, it's just that there is a mismatch there. And that happens because most of the time when startups look for designers, they set the wrong expectations. So many times we have had like startups coming and then saying like, I only need a designer. And then they say that like for any project. So it could be like a video, it could be like a website, it could be a brand redesign. And then we need to uncover a bit more about what's the type of project they're looking for. And many times I realize that they don't have clarity. I mean, they don't know that there is actually different degrees of specialization within the design industry. And obviously they don't know that because it's not their focus. And it's not where they should focus actually, like trying to understand like the intricacies of the design industry. But like you have different roles like UX, UI, brand, graphic design, motion design, strategists, illustrators, VFX, 3D, etc. And depending on that, then like not all designers will be the right one. So if you go out and then you approach, and then you are looking for a designer, and then you just put, I'm looking for a designer for my website, then you increase your risk of actually just having a designer who will tell you, yes, I can do your website, but you may not have the expected quality, right? So yeah, that's one. And the other one is that many designers focus on aesthetics, which is something that you can see on the portfolio, but many times startups don't realize upfront that they will actually need to be advised, and they will actually need someone who sometimes like pushes back a little bit because simply like a startup founder doesn't have the perspective about how things should be designed or should be portrayed on the screen, right? So they need a bit of to some extent they need advice, and the consequences of slow execution is that they work with the wrong person, they get a slow delivery, and then they think that they are decreasing costs, but actually like costs are increased, because then like if people spend more time and if they're paying per hour, then the costs are much more higher. Then the second one is like bad strategy. So sometimes startups spend months working on the wrong thing, doing something that they shouldn't do in the first place. So the reason for that is that they lack of clarity about the activity that they need to do. And many times they are not willing to hire an advisor, or they are not willing to talk with the right person. And they think that hiring an advisor is like bringing someone in-house who is like extremely expensive, but you can actually hire someone fractional. We actually have like design directors or creative directors who are willing to just take 5 hours per week or 5 hours just one time to give you a perspective and to define the roadmap, the strategy. And it's true that their hourly rate is probably high, but at the same time, it's like when you only pay 5 hours of it, it's not that much. And then that person can actually put you in the right direction and tell you if you should actually start doing that activity or not, instead of spending months on that. So the consequence of that is like spending months doing something that they shouldn't do. And as a consequence, if you're paying an entire team behind that is depending on their work or things like that, then it's actually extremely expensive when that happens. We have had the case of startups that are developing a product, doing the development of it without actually understanding the market, without doing any research about it. and knowing if there is actually a market for it, but they spend like months paying developers that are actually very expensive, instead of just paying a UX researcher or doing it themselves and then like confronting themselves to clients. Then yeah, it could happen that they are building a brand that doesn't resonate with the market, or is not aligned with the values and so on, and then they're just paying a designer like to design a brand, but then that brand doesn't reflect what the company is, right? Because then you will need to have like a strategies to do that. So yeah, there are many problems that can arise depending on the project for that, but basically that's the main one of having like a bad strategy. And the last one I would mention is yeah, not having the right quality. I mean, ending up with a bad output or a bad quality of the project. And yeah, and that mostly arises because the first thing they think of is sourcing from freelancing platforms. So what happens on freelancing platforms is that the pool of talent is big. So if the pool of talent is big, then clients get lots of applications of messages, much more than what they can handle. And 90% of the designers on those platforms are actually average or not the best. And there is no way to filter properly. And judging only based on the portfolio that is uploaded there is extremely limited. So as a consequence, it's very difficult to spot the right person. On the top of that, if you don't have hiring experience, you will just settle for a designer who knows a little bit more than what you do, but a little bit more than what you know it's not enough many times for a project, especially if you expect quality. And also, if the freelancer has many projects on the platform, lots of money earned, 5 stars, etc., it doesn't mean that he's a good designer. It just means that he's good in the platform itself. He's just good at generating clients for himself within the platform. It doesn't mean that he will be very good at delivering. And that happened to me actually when I hired like many times. Like I was just looking at that and I was like, oh yeah, this guy, and actually not, right? And then like it undervalues designers who are great. I mean, who are like, honestly, that they're amazing, but they're not very good at promoting themselves. Or probably they enter in the platform at the wrong timing because the platform now is overcrowded, and yeah, and then they cannot find the clients, and that's like independent of like how good they actually are. Right? And yeah, that the consequence of that is that they get designers. So startups end up getting designs that they cannot use, and they need to restart the work again, which, if you think about it, it also ends up being very expensive too.
Right. No, that makes a lot of sense. I think that was a very clear explanation. I think I almost want to connect it back to also some of the challenges for freelancers that you mentioned previously. You know, as a freelancer, you're not only expected to execute, but there's an expectation to be able to guide if you really want to stand out. And you know, this is kind of linked to what you were just saying about a startup not having a strategy and really just hiring maybe just the cheaper, but just someone because either their portfolio looks good, but they don't really know how they need that piece of the puzzle to be added to their strategic kind of initiative internally. So I think the worst situation that you can be in is a startup without good strategy and a freelancer who doesn't know how to guide. I think that combination of these two is probably a recipe for disaster. But you mentioned a lot of very interesting points for startups. I'm curious, same question as for the freelancer, but on the startup side, how do you attract companies or startups? How do you collaborate with the brands? As a reminder, Team&Tonic has worked with pretty amazing brands from Netflix, Airbnb, Meta, just to name a few. So how do you get those projects in the pipeline for your community of freelancer?
Yeah. So well, it's not that easy. We are actually still working on that. There is a lot of networking involved within it. Also, like we try to get into social media and expand our reach there as well. There are plenty of strategies that are quite famous, like in the startup world, to go to market. It's not something, honestly, it's not something I would advise freelancers to do, mostly because they have limited resources. I would say that, I mean, it makes total sense for freelancers that they go on either like generalist platforms or platforms like ourselves, because finding a client is actually difficult. And well, there is one that they could actually apply right away, is like building a network around themselves, so providing great work, or actually like build relationships with companies or with people who are affluent within the industries. But from there, like they can also like post on social media, but even that one takes a lot of time if you want to do it well. Um, yeah, and further from that, like well, there are plenty of other strategies that I wouldn't advise designers to do, especially when you're a freelancer, because you need to, as I said, you need to think about the
Mm-hmm.
work, you need to deliver the work.
Yeah.
Then you would need to think about those strategies, manage a client, do
Yeah.
invoices. I don't know, like sometimes there are plenty of things like pay
Mm-hmm.
your taxes and many things like that. That at some point it's like you will just live a very very busy life. Actually.
Right. And that's why, companies like yours and community like yours exist so that freelancers can really focus on delivering great work, and not have to focus too much on that aspect of the the search for a client. Kind of similar with us as well, Sorbet. We've realized that on the payment side, freelancers sometimes go back and forth with client, and it can take days, if not weeks, sometimes to figure out the right way to get paid. And we just want to make sure that that is completely out of the question, so that you focus on the work, and then you have partners or communities in your case. That can support you to just get a better ROI on your time.
Yeah,
I know we're already. You wanted
chasing
to jump on
client
something? Yeah.
payments is a big one actually. Chasing client
Mm-hmm.
payments is a big one, and it's like sometimes it's like it's a struggle from freelancers, and I hear that quite often. And yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and just like disclaimer about what I just said. I don't say that to like for to invite you to apply to my platform. It's like I just say that by pure compassion for freelancers, because I know how hard it is to be able to manage everything, and that's why I truly deeply believe that we provide a good solution for freelancers and for startups as well, because it's extremely difficult, honestly. I mean, when you think about it, like being a one person, a one man show, and then like having to do all of these activities, it's not easy. And on the top of that, you need to be great at your work, So, and you need to understand many different aspects of the market. So it's basically like kind of like being a company without the potential of scaling, which is very hard.
Right. No, definitely. We're already, I think, a little bit over 30 minutes in, so we can dive into the last segment here. As a
Yeah.
reminder for everyone who's tuning in, either on LinkedIn or on X, if you have any questions for Esteban, feel free to write them directly as comments, and we'll address them at the end of the session here. The last segment, sorry, is going to be a little bit more on the future of design and freelancing. We talked about payment being a pain point, but obviously with all the AI tools out there now, and I think my feed personally is always filled with new strategies and new tools, so it can be hard to keep up with. But I guess to start with something a little bit more long term, I'm curious about what's kind of the vision that you see for the future of freelance design? Let's call it over the next 5 years. Do you think AI is going to become more and more, as a helper to freelancers, or do you think they're going to figure out, ways to differentiate? Where do you see freelance design, let's say, 5 years from now in 2030?
Yeah. Well, it's quite difficult to predict, but I will try to provide the best possible answer to that. And I believe that it's important to start thinking about it, because I see many freelancers and designers freaking out about that, like thinking that they will be replaced and so on. To be honest, I had to think about that one like for a long time as well. So I believe that execution is being commoditized, and there are many tools arising that they're replacing execution. And I believe that you should truly build strategic skills to be able to position yourself well in the market. And designers who will act as strategic partners, I think they will have a tremendous advantage over executors. because they will not only be able to set up the strategy, but on the top of that execute much faster using those tools, and those tools will definitely evolve over the next 5 years. I also believe that fractional hiring will dominate, and startups will look to hire designers for less hours, since the designers will actually be able to produce the same amount of work faster. Now, to contradict myself on that, there are also startups who, the most ambitious ones, they will actually still be looking for the best profiles, maybe in-house as well, because they will want to actually keep up with the competition and produce probably like 10 times more than what they produce in the same amount of time. So, well, there are those two sides of the market. And also, I believe that networks like Team&Tonic will start replacing generalist platforms, because startups will want to stop wasting time on vetting designers themselves, and they will want something much more tailored. So yeah, I mean, it's my bet, and that's why I actually work on that these platforms will emerge in the future.
Yeah, no, definitely. If I can add maybe just my own twist to it, I think the challenge today is also the fact that talent is borderless. You've mentioned it, but you have freelancers from all corners of the world today. But the reality is that from a trust perspective, from a collaboration perspective, it can still be hard if you're a solo freelancer to connect and work with clients globally. And again, one of the big pain points is, if you're a client in the US hiring a freelancer in the middle of Africa or in Southeast Asia or the Middle East, you should only focus on the best, set of tools that is going to help you essentially, deliver work and really take advantage of that freelancer skill set. And on our side at Sorbet, that's what we're focusing on, by building this global invoicing tool, allowing you to collect money from clients no matter where they are and no matter where you're located. And we believe that money should be able to move as fast as sending a text or an email across the globe. So that's my personal take on the next 5 years. Obviously, I'm a bit biased here, but I think it's definitely going to be an exciting next couple of years for freelancers, and we're going to see more of them jump into this way of working. Maybe just before wrapping up, one of the last questions I have here for you on the same idea of kind of the future of design or freelancer, or it can even be just tech in general. Are there any specific tech trends that you're following or a bit more personally excited about? It doesn't have to be just about freelancers and designers, but anything that you're kind of monitoring and keeping an eye on.
Yeah, again, definitely AI. AI-powered design tools and AI tools in general as well. Again, I don't think that they will replace designers, but they will supercharge the execution. And I think even as humans in general, we'll start to focus more on things that matter more, rather than spending most of our time executing. So yeah, I on that one is it's kind of a mix of being extremely excited, and also that kind of fear that everyone has of what's the future of humanity and things like that. Yeah, I'm quite excited about that one, but there is the flip side, and then when I talk with people, it's I also feel that kind of apprehension and fear towards this kind of tools, which is totally understandable, and I think we all feel that. And I believe that the best designers will need to use AI to work faster, test ideas immediately, optimize conversions, and then more and more their task. I mean, their activities will shift into something more strategic.
Right. No, that makes a lot of sense. Last question I have for you here, Esteban. And again, if anyone has a question for him, feel free to jump on our X or on LinkedIn just under the video and type it as a comment. We're getting close to wrapping up here, but just curious to know, 2025 is just starting. We're on month number 2. Curious what's next for Team&Tonic. What are kind of the big milestones that you're looking at? Any call to action for the people listening as well? Curious to hear you on that.
Yeah. So for the last 4 years, we have been focusing on delivering the best possible service to our clients, delivering like great, fast work that is focused on providing the best quality price ratio. And now we are on another phase, trying to expand, mostly trying to work with AI and tech startups. Like that industry is actually booming. Most of the funding is allocated there, and on the other side, like for these startups, standing out is a big challenge. So I believe that in the next years, design will be a key differentiator, and those products that are created by startups are the product creation is being commoditized as well, and startups will need to stand out in the market. They have plenty of competitors, and I believe that goes through marketing distribution. Yeah, sorry, probably I cut it a bit. So I was saying that startups need to stand out in the market from the competition, and probably that will go through brand, UX, and marketing distribution as well. So we want to empower AI and tech companies to expand with the best design possible, and we are currently like working on spreading the word to work more with AI and tech startups. So if you know any AI and tech startup that is willing to hire a team of designers or get design work done, then we'd be happy to help them and help them expand.
Amazing. I think that's all we had for you folks. Thanks again, Esteban. At Sorbet, we're super proud to be a community partner of Team&Tonic. We really like the mission. We do believe in empowering creative freelancers around the world with better tools so that they can deliver the best work possible. So yeah, thanks everyone for tuning in. We're trying to host those designer talks every other week. So keep an eye on our social media channels and make sure to go and check out Team&Tonic if you are looking for some extra projects at the moment. And once again, Esteban, this was a pleasure, lovely conversation, and yeah, all the best for Team&Tonic for 2025.
Yeah, thank you, Maher. It's also an honor to be connected with your company, Sorbet. I truly believe that that's also the future of payments. You can enable payments to be faster at lower fees, provide full flexibility, and I also believe that traditional banking solutions were initially not based for, they were not made for the world we are currently in. And sometimes it's actually difficult to exchange currencies and things like that. So yeah, I think it's a great solution.
Amazing. Thank you for the kind words. Thanks again, Esteban. Mm-hmm. Thanks everyone for tuning in. We'll see you next time.
Yeah, take care.
Cool, I think. Yeah.